Good morning. Phillip Davis, Ancestry Lands, Ancestrylands.com. How you doing, folks? Let me adjust this, make this a little bit higher. I swear, man, I just frustrated this morning. And let me just thank everybody for showing up, watching the video. This is more of a helpful hint to you in your daily lifestyle. We talk about being organized, we talk about being prepared, and we talk about mentality, but when you're in a relationship, you got to take notice of when you have someone in a leadership position and they show you examples of good behavior. When I say good behavior, how they deal in business, how they conduct themselves. When I say business, I don't mean just business in your, like my actual business, Ancestry Lands. I'm talking about even your day-to-day business dealings, how you interact with doctors, insurance, when you pay your bills, how you keep receipts, how you log that. It has to be done one way. It can't be done two different ways. It has to be done one way because it's one house. It's ultimately going to be someone's responsibility. So people oftentimes will say, oh, you know, well, it's a joint responsibility. Not really when one account is affected. If you don't have two names on a bill, then the person's name who's on the bill will be the one affected. It's not joint. That shit sounds nice. Sounds nice. So when you do things, especially in a relationship, if it's not directly going to financially affect you, then you have to even more so tilt towards the direction or directive or consideration of the person that is going to be affected most. And to me, when you don't do that, you're selfish as shit. It just proves that you are self-centered because the way you do things are not, it's not the way a person would do things. And when you look at who's right or who's wrong, the method that has the most assurances, meaning that if you do something this way, you have the least probable chance of someone being wrong, is the right way, in my opinion. Because again, you're not deciding on life to tell you you're wrong, especially when you're dealing with someone else's life, someone else's financial and credit. You have to be very understanding and sensitive to that with someone who has taken the time to establish good credit. That's if you care. And when you are a leader, because everyone says they want to be the leader, or you are following a leader, then just like a leader needs to be good, so does the follower need to be a good follower. It's not just the leader is incumbent upon being good. The follower also needs to be a good follower to that leader. It's a symbiotic relationship, not one that you can sit on your ass and decide on when you want to follow and when you don't. That's like me saying when I want to lead or when I don't. The part of the leadership role is you being a good follower to my good leadership equals a good system. But when you have a good leader and bad followers, the outcomes will always tilt to the negative. It reminds me of this story that I read about what we know now is the leader, the military strategist, Sun Tzu, Suntzu. He wrote the book, or the doctrine, The Art of War. And this is exactly what is something that I read well in my 20s. I'm 43 now. That realigned the way I think. It helped to cement a part of me that is very much black and white. I've done tons of personality tests, and I am a very you wouldn't know this, but I'm actually an introverted person. And I'm very black and white, you know, in the sense that I don't allow or don't see the gray very much in life. I don't, you know, because the gray can be such a wide range of yes, no, maybe right. And I do dabble in it, but I stay on the fringes of black and white that border the gray. I'm not a gray person because I find that people who tend to stay in the gray, they tend to be very inconsistent, and most of the time it's day-to-day bullshit with them. It really is. They are just people who are wishy-washy. They tilt towards one end of being right, one end being wrong. They look for ways to find how to get closer to one end of the spectrum. And it's just a bunch of hogwash. And in the story of Sun Tzu, he had a military general or an emperor, I think it was an actual emperor. The emperor summoned Sun Tzu for military advice. And he was testing Sun Tzu to see how well his strategies, his renown, he could prove himself. And as Sun Tzu met with the Chinese emperor, and you can look this story up, you'll probably find it. But I'm doing this from recalling while driving, so some things might be a little veering off, or I might add a little extra details, but the gist of the story is correct. And Sun Tzu, when he met with the emperor, he saw that, his harem, this is obviously more ancient times, his harem of women were, around, and there was a lot of them. And what Sun Tzu ended up doing, he said, do you mind giving me command over your harem, which is maybe let's say about 20, 30 women at that time. Emperor had 99 problems, but we know he didn't have one. Any which way, could you get in your goddamn on lane, boy? I mean, you veering, bruh. I mean, you're veering. BMW 2-seater. I mean, it's a nice car, man, but you got to learn to drive it, man. Hold the thing straight. Any which way. And the emperor said, yeah. So the emperor agreed. And Sun Tzu said, okay, got the ladies into a army formation. He gave out a command, like turn right. Some of the girls did it. Some of the girls didn't know the right from left. Remember, sometimes in these time periods, not everyone got a college degree and a master's in bullshitology. So they didn't know the right from the left. And some of the girls made mistakes and they giggled. He said, okay. And check back with the emperor. He said, I have full authority, correct? The emperor's like, yeah, he wasn't taking him serious. He said, okay, full authority, right? As any general would in wartime. He says yes, which one of the stipulations, which you'll get to, is the general had full authority. There's no court-martialing. There's no, you're going to go before a trial. A general could decide to end life based upon his authority. That was his responsibility. Because in those times, they were warring with the Mongols and the Huns and all these different armies at the time where, the Great Wall of China was being built. Because the Great Wall of China actually took quite I think almost a millennia to finish. And they built that because of all the invading armies that were constantly trying to invade China and take over the country. So Sun Tzu checks again, tells another command. Hey, all right, everybody about face, turn straight. Girls do it and chuckle again. Let's say about 3 girls made the same mistake and everybody's giggling, get hee-hee-ha-ha, hackling and cackling, kiki and ka-kan, right? Sun Tzu takes one of the swords from one of the armed guards that are guarding and protecting the emperor, brings the 3 girls over and quickly beheads them. Now you can imagine the emperor's like, what the hell? Oh shit. He said, hey, you said that I had acting authority. Because the emperor's like, yo, you just off 3 of my baddest girls, right? And Sun Tzu said, I remind you, you gave me complete authority over these women. Now, he did it in front of the 3 women because they thought it was a joke. They thought he sliced 3 heads off. The first girl was laughing all the way up until that blade hit her neck. And then she wasn't laughing anymore. The next girl's crying, begging, and pleading. And then the last one, she obviously done wet herself because she understands that there's no way out. Sun Tzu was serious because he wanted to get the emperor to understand that what was going to happen next was going to be this outcome. And as the emperor had to relent when he saw the first girl's head get chopped off, he understood that he had given him the authority and the responsibility to produce the outcome. And the emperor had to abide by his decision when he gave this person leadership over these women. Now, this is not about an oppression for women. This is about the example of what is to come. So now, after he got done setting the mood right, he issued an order to the remaining formation, these harem. They're not in military arms. They're in just silk robes and slippers and, whatever they were wearing, laying around trying to get the emperor to come in and clap them cheeks. And he told them, right turn. Now, everybody turned on a dime. Ain't no laughing, no kiki, ha-ha, and there ain't no hackling and cackling. Ain't nobody giggling and wiggling. He gave him another order, turn sharp. And in that moment, he had an army formation that understood the assignment, as we say nowadays. And the emperor understood right then and there. You gotta be freaking kidding me, Duke. The emperor understood right there that he was about that business. And the lesson was that with a severe enough punishment, you can form an army with a group of women with the right motivation. You can form an army with the right motivation. Now again, let's peel this back a little bit. That story is extreme. But in those times, the risk of a Hun army, when you have somebody invading your country, when you have somebody looking to take over it, and they're not going to do it, there's no maritime law, there's no laws against humanity. They're coming to pillage and do everything that is part of the downfall to the dark side of humanity. They're coming to take. They're not. It don't matter, man, woman, child, baby, dog, horse. They're coming to pillage, and they're not taking any prisoners. And if they do, life's going to be worse than if you were taken off the living list. It'll be worse for you under their rule. It's not a time where people had air travel, citizen rights, and there were grocery stores. This is a time where it was you either were protected or you had to get that work. You could be taken off. There was no health care, no dental, no 401k. Nobody had health care benefits or savings and loans. None of that stuff. And when you have a person that you're looking to decide on whether they will be the top military strategist to decide on whether you can hold back an invading army that has no wants or wishes but to destroy you, you got to pick the right person. And the emperor needed to be convinced without a shadow of a doubt that the man he was choosing was the right man for the job. Because literally everyone's, billions of people's lives, well, I'm over exaggerating on that number, but the entire country of China was depending on it. When you have that level, then what Sun Tzu did was absolutely appropriate. And the reason why I say that is because he was able to understand that with the right motivation, he could form an army of women to understand how to follow orders. Now, that's all well and good. How does that translate into today, Phil? I'm glad you asked. The reason why that translates into today is that with this current economic time this time period that we're in, you either got to be the Sun Tzu or you got to be that army that will follow a Sun Tzu. There are no mercenaries that do well and have the best life when hard times hit. The reason being is that if your income goes down, let me fix the lighting here. If your income goes down during this time, or you can't work, like what happened with me when I hurt my hamstring, tore my Achilles. There we go. When I tore my Achilles, I could not work, and I got paid per diem. I had to pay for my own health benefits. When you're on your own trying to survive in this country and you don't have support systems or external help, or you don't have a way to supplement your income, you now are on a financial, I call it a sand of time. You're going to have only a certain amount of time before the income that you have, the capital, talked about that in other videos, right? The capital that you have access to, your savings, emergency funds, all these things that we talked about how to get prepared for emergencies now come into play. You only have a limited amount of resources left to utilize. When you're in a family setting, when you choose a person to be that leader and you're following, if they're a good leader, you got to have faith in their leadership. It's not a time to buck, because if you're not good at leadership, then you need to play to your strengths, and you need to become the best follower, the best student, and follow the lead, the example of those in a leadership position. Because again, in the example of Sun Tzu, if generals were looking at his example, which is another element of the story that I left out, because in a lot of those times, the generals were sitting in that court and they were mocking Sun Tzu. And once he showed that he could get those army of women together to do the basic formations, then the generals now had a level of respect, and they understood now who he was and why they should listen to him. So even Sun Tzu had to convince the generals in court. But he got everyone to understand when he was issuing out something, he was not also teaching that message to the women. He was also instructing the generals that if the emperor gave him the authority, they could be off too. And when you're in your household, we play stupid games with our financial outcomes, our financial lives, when we have a person who is trying to dedicate themselves to everyone making it. When you got somebody traveling to work like I'm doing day in and day out on these hour drives, back and forth, trying to make it work, and I'm doing videos in here, you may not always get instructions, but you're seeing examples. You're seeing somebody do the work. And when you see someone doing the work, what you do is you follow the action. You don't always need instruction. I expect my children to follow my actions more than them follow my instructions, because they may not always remember what I said to them, but they'll remember what I did in my life. And the same goes for you all. I always tell you, you got to get organized. But again, if you are the leader and you are leading in goodness, in good ways, it is not about that you have enough money for the outcome. But again, if you're being productive, if you're being constructive, it doesn't mean that you're going to be nice. Driving forth to work every day is not, it's aggravating, it's time consuming. You got to get up earlier. You've seen this traffic. You got to have immense mental strain and mental toughness. Not only that, you don't always respond to threats that are seen. Many of the threats as a leader are going to be threats that are unseen. And that's the reason why you are the leader, because the things that are coming that cannot be seen are the reason why you're in the leadership position. You don't prepare your children to read so they can read right now, you prepare them to read so they can be literate before they go to kindergarten. So you teach them letters, words, counting. You prepare them for the unforeseen at that time, because the child does not know I have to go to school when they're 2 years old. The children don't understand economic hardship when there are children. They only understand if they have it or they don't have it that day. They only understand that when they actually go out into the world, but you can't expect them to just get it right away until they've had time to understand how you led and get some explanation to the action. That's also necessary. Because again, they will be recalling your actions, but they won't understand what it means, which is why they need guidance. You can't just say, okay, yesterday you were 17, now you're 18, you're supposed to go get it, go outside and go hunt now, and that's it. Well, I prepared you, and then you see them struggling, and you say, I don't know what to do, and you never take onus of the fact that maybe you didn't teach them enough. Maybe you didn't prepare them for what was to come. Maybe they followed and did everything else, but your leadership ran short. But again, if they're not following, they can't expect to get good outcomes because they're not good followers. And again, if you're a good leader, then you have to be very, very hard and strict on the fact of making sure that your leadership is followed to the T. Even when you're wrong, it still needs to be followed. It is not a moment when you make an error to gloat over a person being wrong, because if I'm even more wrong, hey, stupid, you're the one that's going to be affected as the follower. Who the hell prays on the downfall or celebrates when the person they're following, that they're leading, or that they're following as a follower makes a mistake? Only an idiot. Cut your nose to spite your face, dummy. Any which way, folks, that's all I got to say for today. Get organized, and honestly, you should never apologize for the position you're in. You should never apologize for being a leader and deciding that, but again, if you're going to be a leader, be a good one. Don't sit here and play to people's feelings, play to the outcomes. That's the only thing that's going to matter, because they're always going to criticize. And like I said, you're going to see people laugh or, yeah, you made a mistake. Yeah, you made an error. And they're going to try to make you wrong, even though when you're wrong, it's going to affect them the most. Well, how stupid is that? I've never wanted my father to fail in life when I was in his home. I wanted him to succeed. Because if he didn't succeed, it would have been my outcome that would have been the end result. My life would have been affected by his failure. Only an idiot would be like, yeah, dad, wrong. Yeah. And oh, he wrong. Yeah, let's all pile on. Never has been my iota. Not even once. The stupid they would laugh at them drowning. At the same time, they would laugh that the boat that's sailing and carrying them afloat in the ocean is now sinking. Any which way, folks, Phil Davis, Ancestry Lands, AncestryLands.com. You know what my links are in the description section of my book. Buy it or don't buy it, I don't care today.